Hello, everybody. This is IFS podcast, and I'm Ines Subashka. Today, I have another great guest, Robbie Bourke from All Things Strength and Wellness. Today, we will talk about epigenetics, circadian biology, metabolic typing, neuromuscular therapy, and much more. The first time I heard Robbie talking in a podcast, I was on a long ride in the mountain. I always listen to some experts in the field and enjoy their knowledge. I remember I was fascinated by what he had to say. I listened the interview with him 3 times in just one day, so I could absorb all the information. And then I spent the whole week researching the topics and the books he recommended. So, anyways, I can't wait to hear what he has to share with us today. So, hello, Robbie, and how are you doing?
How you doing? Thanks so much for having me on. It's very flattering, and God, I hope I live up now to that introduction.
Yes, I really enjoyed. I listened the podcast on Sigma Nutrition, and I was really fascinated by all the information and the knowledge. And it was a really detailed knowledge in so many different topics. Like you have a really vast knowledge and different perspective on the same thing, and it's really fascinating.
It's the one thing though. It's funny you say all that because the one thing though I would always want anyone to ever do for themselves is to always think for themselves and always to have enough courage to come to their own conclusions on things. So I would start this podcast off by saying, please do not blindly accept anything that I say, and please never accept anything that anyone ever tells you blindly. Always have enough courage to think for yourself and always come to your own conclusion. And that includes when I'm sharing information. Always question not only what I'm going to share, but what everyone shares, and always just think for yourself. So I really appreciate that the you're being I'm blushing here. You're flattering me with compliments, but just I'd like to set that kind of context at the very start of this show that all I ever really want for anyone to do is to think for themselves. So I'd like to empower people to have enough courage to go their own way and their own path. So all I do is just share information. I'm not trying to be a guru or say that my way is the only way. Never any of that. So
Yes, that's a really great message, and I like it how you said it. Have the courage to think for yourself and choose for yourself, because that's really important. So people believe that we are somehow at the mercy of our own genes. That what happens to your family members is what will for sure happen to you. Yet your work shows that the environment dictates the genetic expression. What are the environmental factors we can influence in order to be healthier and fitter and actually determine how our genes respond to the environmental input?
that's a great question, and just from the get go, what I'll say is it's not my work personally. It's work from other experts within the field, and I suppose the person who really brought this to my attention first and foremost was Bruce Lipton and his book Biology Belief. And Bruce Lipton is an actual PhD cell biologist, so he has taught in medical school. So I mean, if you want an expert or somebody who whatever you want to call an expert, with somebody who has the authority to talk about epigenetics will be Bruce. So I'm just relating on the information that I would have got from Bruce. And since Bruce Lipton, other people out there who would have studied this in greater detail than me. But your question in terms of the biggest environmental factors that we can control, definitely would be things like our nutrition, without question, our sleep and circadian cycles, which I think, listening to you speak, it sounds like you have an interest also in circadian biology as well, like myself. I love talking about circadian biology. Um, Environmental toxins. Now, listen, can we get rid of all the toxins in our environment? No. But can we minimize their impact? Yes, we can. There's definitely things we can do. And when I talk about environmental toxins, we're talking about things that are like processed foods, mercury fillings in our teeth seem to be not too good for us from what certain experts talk about. Other things like fluoride in water definitely seems to have an impact on some neurological function, maybe thyroid function. There seems to be some evidence for that. And toxic people in your life, people who just drain you of energy. I'm all about having unconditional love and acceptance, but when I talk about those topics, people then think that everyone gets a free pass and that somehow you like everyone. You don't have to like everyone. You just need to understand everyone is the way they are for a reason. And that's unconditional love and unconditional acceptance and having compassion and empathy. It doesn't mean you have to hang around people though. But you have that understanding that everyone and everything is the way they are for a reason. So far we have nutrition, sleep, circadian biology, environmental toxins. A huge thing is our mindset and our thoughts. And we need to start becoming more aware that our thoughts of our thoughts, because are our thoughts and are our belief systems, are they really ours, or are they just indoctrinations that we were given since we were kids? Are they just scripts that were handed down to us from our parents and our society and our culture? And we need to be able to take a step back and say, do I really believe these scripts? Do I really want to live the life that this script tells me to live? Or do I want to step back and realize that I'm in control here and I can rewrite this script? I can rewrite this subconscious belief system, and I can now start to perceive the world the way that I really want to see it and live life on my terms. So again, you kind of brought the point, we're definitely not a victim to life. Life doesn't happen to us, it happens for us. And then the final thing that would be a huge influence would be exercise. Exercise is huge. Exercise turns genes on and off all the time. Well, our genes are turning off on and off all the time as it is, but exercise has a profound impact on our genetic expression. So with everything I just named there, nutrition, sleep, circadian rhythms, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little more, environmental toxins or exposure to toxins, your mindset and exercise, they are areas that you are 100% in control of. You can control those environmental factors, and therefore you can have a profound impact on your genetic expression.
I really like it how you said it about the mental thing because I really believe that there is like four levels of consciousness that things happen to you, by you, through you, or as you said it. And most people are on the level that things happen to them, that they're victims of their life and the circumstances. And it seems like what limits us is our own beliefs, and people seem to have the most problem with their beliefs and getting out of that frame and doing something differently.
Definitely, absolutely, yeah, without question.
And what I enjoy about your work is that you have a whole concept about the human body. As you said, not just the diet and exercise part, but you take the mind into play as well. You say that our subconscious is something like our habit brain. What do you mean by this, and how could it be useful to change one's habits, for
So,
example?
so just say it again, that the subconscious is our habit brain. Is that what you said? Yeah, so again, based off work of numerous people. So again, if you read any of like the main sort of like any of the top books that have ever been written, like Think and Grow Rich, like these classic books, anything by Tony Robbins, anything by Bruce Lipton, anything by Joseph Shilton Pierce, had a profound influence on me. They're all going to start talking about this subconscious mind versus your conscious mind, and essentially your subconscious mind is something you essentially download in your first few years of life when you're a kid. Essentially, when you're a kid, you're unconditional in that you just basically accept everything as truth. And those early formative years form your kind of default or operating system of how you perceive and see the world around you. So if you're, for I always use the example of a Christian family, so had a Christian faith. It's just an easy kind of example to give. But if you were born into a Christian family and you were told that Christ sacrificed himself for you and God created the world and there's a heaven and there's a hell, that's pretty much how you are going to start seeing the world. You're going to start seeing the world through this kind of Christian lens, and that becomes your subconscious belief system. Conversely, if you were that same baby, but now you were brought up by atheists, you were very scientifically minded, you would think religious was preposterous. You would think, what? There's a God and man in the sky. Don't be ridiculous, because that was the belief system that you were indoctrinated with. And all the great texts, what they talk about is to be able to step outside of those masks, to be able to self-actualize and realize who you are as a human in this universe. or really you're a spirit having a human experience, and to be able to get down deep into that level, to be able to step outside of these indoctrinations you were given. Like, okay, my name is Robbie Bourke, but that doesn't tell you anything about who I am. Like, who am I? What is my place in this universe? Okay, like Robbie Bourke is from Dublin, Ireland, if we want to do it by the conventional society norms. But really, as I said, I'm a spirit having a human experience on planet Earth, and it's trying to be able to strip back all these masks that we identify ourselves with, these subconscious belief systems that have been endowed upon us, and to really find out who we are and what we're really about. So your subconscious belief systems are impacted by many things: your friends, family, of course, your society and culture, where you went to school, and then self-actualization is to be able to step away from that and say, is this truly who I am, or am I just a reflection of my environment? And so your subconscious is very much at the mercy of the environment you surround yourself with.
You said great, and many people seem to kind of not realize it, but know it, but they have the hard time to actually apply it in their life. Could you tell something how you did it in your life? Because somehow we start from the same place, being not really conscious, and slowly starting to see more things about life and realizing them, and then having some kind of like a fight with ourselves and trying to be something different and step out of the frame. How did you do it in your life?
What I would say, first of all, is that it's not a destination, in that I would never say that I'm fully aware. Like, to get full awareness, you know, that's probably who Buddha and Jesus was, and these great, and Gandhi, and all these great people that have been down through history. They may have attained it. I'd even say that they would argue that they didn't attain it. It's more of a journey. It's definitely more of a journey, in that, like, there's some days you're a bit more aware than other days. It's a moment to moment sort of thing. I always go back then to the book, The Four Agreements, and the last agreement in that book is to always just try your best. And your best is dynamic; it changes. Your best on one moment can be very different to your best in the other moment. And I see awareness like that. There's sometimes I'm very aware. There's other times I can just drop back to that subconscious belief system for a few seconds, and then I'm in a situation now where I'd like to think I can kind of snap out of that a little bit better than most people, because I'm a little more aware. I guess, in a sense, I was just very lucky that my influences, we live now in the information age, and I'm just looking at the information that I started to come across, like Sean Croxton's podcast with you. You came across Danny's podcast, and that's how we're interacting. I guess I've just been very lucky that I've come across people who put out very um, thought provoking and life changing information, and I've just gone down that path, and it's kind of made me realize that there's a lot more to this reality around us, and it's allowed me to be able to step outside my subconscious belief and the masks that I was given, and to sort of start to realize and attain my self actualization, and to become more aware. But I would not sit here and say that I definitely have 100% awareness all the time. Definitely not. And I all say this to the students who I teach, and I teach at a personal training college, and I would teach them this stuff. It's funny because yesterday was the first day for our new group, and the first day is all about this stuff. It's all about epigenetics, and it's all about the subconscious mind versus conscious mind. So it's very fresh in my mind. But I always say that I always say I'm not a guru. I do not stand up here and as someone who's better than you and who you have to bow before. I stand here as a human, just like everyone else in this classroom, anyone who's listening to this. I have the same fears, the same flaws, the same, little idiosyncrasies that we all have. And all I'm saying is that we're all unique. We're all in this together. We're all children of this universe. And again, it just goes back to, we're all on a mission to find ultimate happiness in this earth. We're all on a mission to have unconditional love for ourselves, first and foremost, and then for those who are around us. But we need to find it within ourselves first. And it's a journey. It's not a destination. So with awareness, for me, it's a constant journey. There's moments that said I'm more aware. There's other moments I can be less aware.
You formulated it really great that you should do your best and that it's dynamic, and that's what most people don't realize, that it's a daily work, that it's not a state that you achieve and just stay there. It's something that you should constantly try to recreate, maybe.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it's a dynamic. The analogy or the example I give to anyone I speak about is, your best on the day when someone close passes away or dies is going to be very different to the best when everything is just going, those days, everything's going great. You won some money, I don't know, you won an iPad or I don't know, something great. You passed, you got your degree, you passed your master's. Like your very best in that moment is going to be very different to the best when a close friend passes away or a very close family member may pass away or all you can ever do is ask yourself, did I do my very best in that given moment in time? And even if you did not do your best, the simple fact is that if you are truly showing unconditional love for yourself, you should have forgiveness at all times. And that again goes, if you can't forgive yourself, first of all, you can't forgive anyone else. You can't give something you don't have. So if you don't have unconditional love for yourself, if you can't forgive your own self for certain things that have happened to you previously, you can't share unconditional love and you cannot forgive them. You can't, as Paul Chek says, if you don't wear it, you can't share it. And again, it's a continual process, though. It's not a destination. It's not like, oh, I've unconditional love, I've attained it, I'm here. It's a constant dynamic process. But it's having the awareness in your mind, wherever the mind is, of these ideas of unconditional love and acceptance and having forgiveness. Like unconditional love means that forgiveness is already built into it anyway. But to have unconditional love for yourself would mean that even if you didn't try your best, you have forgiveness for yourself.
Yes, so that's great to love yourself. Most people don't do it. And
It's tough. It's tough. It's tough to love yourself. It is tough.
yes, it's tough. It's a journey, as you said. And back to the environmental factors, as I said, in my opinion, one of the most overlooked factors in health and fat loss is circadian biology. I know that you also take into account these factors and like the consequences of, let's say, exposure to artificial light and how it affects sleep. What are the main things that people need to know about artificial light and how it affects them and their life, their health, and everything else?
Okay, great question, and you know at this stage I love talking about this. So what I would say starting off is a really good resource is Dan Pardy. So Dan Pardy's been on Danny Lennon's podcast. So anybody wants, oh, he's brilliant, and Dan's an absolute gentleman. So he's a very good authority on this because he has researched sleep, and his actual research on sleep is very applicable to real life because most sleep research is always on sleep deprivation. Like, okay, we're not going to sleep for 4 days and see how you're going to be. Of course, you're going to be messed up. But his research is like, okay, I'm going to just take a half an hour off your sleep duration every day this week. So by Friday, you're 2.5 hours in depth, and I want to see how that affects you. And that has huge ramifications on impulse control, energy, of course, would be one. Your decision making, your food choices, your mood, hormone production, blood sugar rate, just on a half an hour miss a night. So that's a lot more real world because we know people that be like, oh, just another half an hour on the phone, another half an hour. But in terms then of some things we can do to optimize our circadian biology, and in saying in terms of so for the listeners, what we're really getting down to here is what the circadian rhythm or circadian biology is the 24-hour cycle of the planet. It's not just the light and dark cycles; it's other rhythms too. But mainly, we're going to talk about the light and dark cycles in terms of the circadian rhythm. So it's your exposure to light and dark, and with light. So even like when the sun goes up, there's a blue spectrum in that light. We can't see it with our naked eye, but it's there. So the analogy or the example you can give is like the rainbow. So you see a rainbow sometimes, you can actually see that blue spectrum in that rainbow. So you can. Now that blue spectrum, when that light gets into your eye, it goes to a place in your brain called your suprachiasmatic nucleus, which then goes to a gland called your pineal gland. And your pineal gland releases a hormone. You know all this stuff. Your pineal gland releases that hormone melatonin, and so when blue light gets into your eye, you shut off melatonin. You will not make melatonin. Okay, so it's very important. So when you're around artificial light or anything that gives off a blue light spectrum, melatonin production will cease. Okay, or it'll be greatly reduced. So it will have very little impact on the body. Now that's a very good thing. First thing in the morning. So blue light exposure is good first thing in the morning. So that's why you want to get outside and go for a walk and expose yourself to sunlight, because you want to get some of that blue light in and tell your body it's morning time. That's all great. We're all happy out there. So you can be on your phones and iPads and all that at that time as well. But then when it starts to get dark and into the evening and nighttime, we need to start limiting our exposure to artificial lights, and particularly to blue light. Because again, blue light is going to signal that it's daytime. It's also going to elevate another hormone called cortisol. And cortisol is a very good hormone. We would not live without it. But the problem is if you produce too much of it. So like most things, it's the dosage of things is what is the difference between a medicine and a poison. So I always use the example, like water can kill people. Like people have died of drinking too much water. It's called hypernatremia. So like we all know the benefits of water, but if you drank like 10 liters of it in an hour, you could potentially have cardiac arrest and die. So again, the difference between medicine and a poison is usually dosage. And timing. So it's the same with light exposure. Blue light in the morning, excellent. We want high cortisol, we want blue light. Nighttime, we do not want blue light exposure. We want blue light exposure and artificial light exposure to be low, and we want melatonin then to concurrently rise. Because when blue light is low, or there's very little to no blue light around, melatonin will now start to rise. And that starts to make us go sleepy and want to go to bed. And melatonin is a really powerful antioxidant in the body. So in the morning time, we want blue light and cortisol to be high. And at nighttime, we want blue light and artificial exposure to be very low or very limited, and melatonin to rise. But as you know, because of the invention of the light bulb, our computers that we're on right now, iPhones, iPads, all this artificial light, we're essentially robbing the nighttime. And we're drowning ourselves in artificial light. And then this is starting to screw up that cortisol and melatonin axis, and it's starting to screw up our circadian biology. And it's been shown that like shift work is very detrimental on health. Night work can also be very detrimental on health, but shift work more so. We are constantly going from a day shift to a night shift, more detrimental. But definitely getting too much artificial light exposure at nighttime can have huge ramifications on your health if you do that for a long period of time. Like if it's a once-off thing, and I always try and stress this, people start to worry then, like, I can't go out to a nightclub, or I can't go out with my friends. It's like, of course you can. That's all okay every now and again. Like, a few times, like, 1, 2, 3, 4 times even a month probably wouldn't do too much damage to you. But it's people who are on their phones and iPads every night, night after night, right up till just they go to bed. And it's like 11, half 11, 12, 1 o'clock. And they're wondering why they constantly had to hit the snooze button then when they had to get up for work. 1, they didn't get enough sleep. And 2, just their whole light exposure was way off. And you can get a thing then called a melatonin hangover. So that's where you didn't get enough dark exposure before bed because you were on your iPhone or iPad or whatever. And now, like, your body's like, okay, payback time. You're going to be really tired and cranky in the morning because you didn't give me enough melatonin last night. You stayed around artificial light too long. And that artificial light is basically cutting off melatonin, and it's also telling your brain, oh, it's still daytime, and you're actually now producing cortisol at night, and you shouldn't be doing that. Like, of course, you'll be producing a little bit, but it should be very, very reduced and low. So we definitely do not want high cortisol at night. We want high cortisol in the morning, low melatonin in the morning, high melatonin at night, low cortisol at night. And that's all got to do with our exposures with light. So certain things we can do, because people then go, oh, what am I supposed to do? Go to bed at 6 o'clock in the winter when it's dark. They get real snotty about it. And it's like, no, there's certain strategies that you can do. So you probably noticed the first thing you can do is get blue light blocking glasses. They just look like sunglasses. You can get them on Amazon. You can get them as cheap as $10 or as expensive as up to a few hundred. Depends on what you're willing to spend. Obviously, the more dear ones are a bit better. But they can come in like a yellow tint or rose tint, and they kind of stimulate like sunset. And sunset will start to stimulate melatonin because the blue light spectrum starts to reduce in the light that's coming from our sun, okay? So you can get blue light blockers in your glasses. You can also get systems on your laptop. One is called Flux, and that will actually set your laptop to basically shut the blue light off your laptop. So it's basically like the sunsets on your laptop. Other things, if you're living in the house or an apartment, don't have the overhead lights on. Have lamps on in the corner instead, or even better, candles. I know it's a bit wacky for some people when they say that, put candles. If you have enough candles on, there will be plenty of light. Don't worry, you'll see where you're going. People think like you're like that candles don't give off good light. It's just because they haven't been in a candlelit room or something in a while.
I've heard about people that use like 10 kilograms of candles a month or something like that in order to
Yeah.
stay, yes, in candlelight.
So yeah, candles are great because there's no blue light spectrum off a candle, or not to my knowledge anyway. If there is, it's very limited. And fire too. You know, set a fire in your kitchen, in your stove. But if you're in an apartment, maybe you can't set a fire. But candles, but definitely even like it's like a continuum. What's better, having all the lights on overhead or having lamps on in the corner? Lamps are better. What's better, candles or lamps? Candles. So it's a continuum there in terms of spectrum. So it's just what are you willing to do? But the glasses, the blue light blockers, are definitely one way to do it. And then your light exposure, just try and dim down your lights. Now the last thing I'll say, because I'm speaking a lot here, the last thing the last thing I'll say then is in terms of your sleep, try to get into a sleep routine. So I always say to people, right, if you want to be asleep, like literally, asleep in bed, um, say at 10 o'clock, we'll just say at 10, start preparing yourself for bed at 9. Don't have to go to bed, but start. So what I say is get the light exposure down now, start to calm down. So there's a few things you can do here. Read, journal, take a bath, have a shower, listen to some meditation music, whatever winds you down for that hour, do it. But get your phone away. Well, like don't be like working on your phone, like nothing that stimulates you. You want things that wind you down. So give yourself that hour, 45 minutes to wind down, and then do that night after night, and that becomes a signal to your body. Oh, it's bedtime. I'm preparing to bed, and I'm telling you, by the time 10 p.m. comes around, you'll be gone. So it's just and that's called sleep hygiene. Setting up your room. You want your room dark. You want it cool. You want electronics off. You don't want any blue light in the room. So turn your phone off. And then people go, but I need my alarm. Buy an alarm then, okay? Like with a battery power, for God's sake. They cost a few euro. And by the way, once you actually get your circadian cycle dialed in, you're gonna start waking up naturally then in the morning. So you won't even need your alarm. But some people still like to set it just in case. But most people still wake up before. So with your room dark, cool, nice kind of cool room if you can get the temperature fairly cool, and try to have no electronics on and no artificial light, and try and get that 1 hour wind down time. I always say that's your time. It's your meditate, think, read, journal, have a bath, whatever it is that you love to do it in that hour. Let yourself wind down. Not exercise now under bright lights. Yeah, what's exercise? No, try not to do that because that's stimulating. You're trying to do things that will bring you down, not stimulate you. So
And that really works actually because, like the sleeping routine you said, like I tried it on myself, and when I stay on the computer for like about 10 o'clock and I can't go to sleep, if I get off the computer around 9, I have no problems falling asleep around 10, and I really feel great on the next day.
same with me. Yeah, same with me. So about 9 o'clock in the winter time for me is where I turn everything off. In the summer here in Ireland, like our summer days are quite long. It doesn't get darker like till 11 at the height of our summer. So I usually push it out to 9:30, and then I start getting ready. So it's funny because literally from the months of April to August, I never see nighttime. Because
Yes, I always wonder. I've never been there, but I always wonder how it's to be daylight almost all the time. I think it's really hard.
well, we're not quite like Iceland's even more unique. Iceland literally in the height of their summer, like, it doesn't get dark till like 1 in the morning, and then it gets bright again at like 4 or 5 in the morning. They only have like this 3 or 4. It's mad. But in Ireland, at the height of our summer, we probably have 19 hours of daylight, like from 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. is our nighttime in the summer. But then we get very long winters though. In the winter time, like it'd be dark from like 4 all the way to like 8 the next morning. So we get both extremes. But I personally am a seasonal person. I like our season, so I like to have the diversity of it.
And do you think that there is some kind of like a genetic adaptation to this? Because do you think like a person like me, if I come to live there, I would feel weird, and when it's dark, I might get depressed or something like that because there isn't enough sunlight, and like I'm used to being here where we have kind of a steady change in the daylight and dark cycles?
What I would say is I haven't researched that personally myself to give any like definitive answer on that. Now I have heard Paul Chek say that if you do move away from your natural circadian rhythm and live in some other part of the world, that he feels that could be an impact on optimizing your health. But what I will say is you can definitely adjust your circadian clock. You can definitely do that. Like you can definitely go to other parts of the world, and once you adjust your clock to that, you can definitely go right back to the kind of the way your clock was at home in terms of, having a good circadian rhythm. But because I've asked that question before, I've asked that to other people and they haven't been able to answer. I've asked, so like for instance, let's just say tomorrow or whenever, let's just say I had to leave Ireland and live in New Zealand. Would that have some impact on my life? Because my whole genes, even the last few lineages of my generation have all been on that sort of basic Irish circadian clock. Would that have some impact? I don't know if anyone could answer that, but you definitely can adjust yourself enough anywhere in the world that I don't think it would be like, I don't think it's going to kick a disease off you as long as you optimize your circadian rhythm within the environment you're within that like country that you're currently in. So if you came to Ireland and once your clock got set, I think you'd be okay. But would it be a factor in you optimizing your health to the absolute most based on your genetics being used to where you're kind of originally from? I couldn't say.
And what do you think about? Do you think that nutrition has some impact in adjusting the circadian cycle? Like, have you heard about the biorhythm diet by Bourke Fajerli?
I have, yeah, I have, and he's done way more work in that. But I've definitely heard some things that there's a very good book called The Circadian Prescription by a doctor called Sidney Baker, and in his book he believes that yeah that so this actually goes back to what I said earlier on. So because when I used to hear the word circadian rhythm, I used to just instantly think of sleep, like as in light and dark cycles. But circadian rhythm is basically like all the biorhythms throughout the day, like your bowel movements and your hunger signals and all this, and certain times hormones are released. So again, cortisol in the morning and melatonin at night, and testosterone's higher at certain times as well than other times in the day. And that's a very important thing to think about if you're getting your bloods done. Because if you get your bloods taken at 7 a.m. and then you get your retest taken at 5 p.m. in the afternoon and try and match them together, it's completely invalid. So make sure you're always getting your bloods done at the same time because your blood markers will fluctuate at different times of the day. But definitely meals can have an impact. So in Sidney Baker's work, he believes that in the morning you should have more protein and fat, and that's more of a circadian signal. And then in the evening you might have more of your carbohydrates. That's just based on his work, what he believes. But definitely when you go traveling to, now I haven't looked into Borges' work more, you maybe can touch on that a little more. But definitely when you go traveling, there's definitely strategies you can use where like if you get into that country early in the morning, like say if you arrive in there, it's like get out, get the light into your eye, eat something so like your body's like, oh, it's breakfast. So you're trying to get your clock set that bit quicker. But there definitely is something to meal timing and circadian rhythm, without question, yeah.
Yes, and from that perspective, do you think that the breakfast is important exactly because it kind of helps your body, informs your body what time of the day is and that it's morning? Because there are a lot of fasting protocols. Personally, I've experimented with all of them, but I really feel better if I have a breakfast in the morning than if I am fasting.
Yeah, so what I will go back to and say is um kind of what I opened up the show with, like, so to never blindly accept anything as absolute truth. Never, no matter what, okay? Always, again, have enough courage to think for yourself and to experiment with yourself. And going back to the point that we are dynamic organisms. So there'll be times in your life where you'll just be like, you know what? I don't feel like breakfast. So and you may thrive on intermittent fasting for a period of time. And then there's other times you're like, I am starving in the mornings and my blood sugar's crashing. And there'll be times where you shift back then to having a breakfast. What I would say is someone is here saying you have to have breakfast because circadian biology dictates it and that's it. You're just like, oh, okay, I have to have breakfast, but I really don't want. So I'd be a bit more, be a little more intuitive, and like these concepts are very interesting. Definitely take them on board. Definitely listen to them. Does there seem to be something to it, as in having a breakfast in the morning in terms of circadian regulator? Absolutely. Would I turn around and say that every single person has to eat it, even if someone says I intermittent fast and I don't eat till 12 and I feel great? Well, who am I to tell you then to you have to eat breakfast? Then I'm not. This is your experience on this world, and you experiment with it whatever way you want. As long as you do it in a loving way to yourself, then I'm 100% supportive of it. So do I think there could be something to it? Absolutely. Do I think it will work for every person at any time, always? No, I don't. Like there's never. There just does. If again, I always say this to everyone of my students. If anyone's ever like really extreme, like this is the only way, I'd always be like, just kind of slightly start tipping backward and be like, okay, see you later. So like, if someone's at like a really extreme end at any end of the continuum, the answer is usually somewhere in the middle. So just to summarize that, do I think there's benefit to it? Absolutely. I think some people need a breakfast. I think their circadian biology or clock sometimes needs that regulator. There'll be certain times in your life where you'll need that. You'll thrive on it, and there could be other times where like you'll intermittent fast and you won't break your meal till midday, and you thrive on that because again your body is dynamic and you're a dynamic organism. So what you're going to thrive on is always going to change on a moment to moment basis. So like what I will say is the nutrition that I'm thriving on right now may not be the nutrition I'll thrive on tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, or a decade. Because again, my body is dictated by the environmental stressors placed upon me. So what works right now may very well and probably will not work in the future.
The point you make is great because I think that most people are kind of scared to change, and they think like even if you're like you have a blog, you write, and or you have a podcast and you say a lot of things and people listen to you and they think that you should just follow one thing to the end of your life, and if you
Yeah,
switch up something and then they start saying that you're like not consistent or you don't have enough knowledge because you're changing your opinion. But that's exactly what you're saying, that life is dynamic and not static and the body is changing, and we should mirror that change and not be trying to force a diet that obviously doesn't match the body state right now.
absolutely, absolutely. And the reason why I say that is because again we go back to what life is. It's a journey, and so far in my journey, I've been in those situations. Like I've been in like those situations where like, oh, I have to have breakfast, I have to have it because I bought into this belief, and then when I eventually was able to step back and say, but my body's telling me it doesn't want this, so why am I forcing this on me? It's because it was so ingrained you had to have breakfast. It's just one thing that now. By the way, I do eat breakfast, but I've intermittent fasted too. Like I went 18 months with no meat, and people go, "Why did you go vegan?" I was like, my body just didn't want meat; it just wanted fish and poultry. And then by the end of that 18 months, my body was just, I would really love some meat because I was into my body. I mean, there's other times too. Like I know, like Jack Cruz was a good influence on me and a very intelligent guy. But again, Jack would be like, you cannot eat 4 or 5 hours before midnight. It basically f's up your circadian rhythm. And the thing is, then if you start it now, and that's very true. Like that could be very true for most people. And that you really, for most people, I would not recommend going to bed with a full belly of food. It does seem to, have impact on your circadian rhythm and leptin signaling. And most people don't sleep too well when they have a big belly of food in them. But then people get this thing like, I cannot eat after 7. I cannot eat after 7, and then you get and that becomes a stressor where you're like, it's actually okay to have a little snack or something to eat, like it's okay. Like experiment. Like it's your body. Like don't believe these things blindly. Like you have your own experience. Like Paul Chek again, another guy profound influence me. This is when Paul Chek talks about the difference between education and experience. Education is where I read about something in a book and I follow it. Experience is when I feel it, when I do it. Two profoundly different things. And he always gives the example of when he speaks about nutrition and he gets like the conventional nutrition person will stand up and say, no, that's not correct. And the conventional nutrition person, again, love them for all they are. They're usually overweight, they're unhealthy, whatever has happened to them so far in their lives, they're just not in a position where they're loving themselves. And then Paul Chek would say, this is the prime example. This is the nutritionist who's overweight, who is just mentally not in a good place, who has ego attached. They have to prove they're right, and they're just putting forth their education. And there you have Paul Chek, 55, 56 years old, lives and breathes what he preaches. You can see it in him. You can feel it off him. That's a man who not only has the education, but has the experience. He has lived what he preaches. He has felt what he preaches. He has felt what it's like not to eat food for days. He has felt what it's like to be a vegan. He has felt what it's like to be a carnivore. He's experimented with his body. And that's all I'd ever say to people is, again, go back, have enough courage to think for yourself. Have enough belief to be your own person and follow your own path. Always take the information on board that people are saying with a critical mind, not an open mind. You don't want to be open-minded. You don't want to be closed-minded. You want to be critically minded. Okay? Because open-minded people, when people hear that, open-minded people are aloof. They're like, oh, everything's great. You want to be critically minded, but in an unconditional, again, loving and accepting way. But again, always go back to yourself. What do I believe? What do I feel? So, and that goes back to all these nutritional things. Like, it just always comes down to the context and the individual at that time. Should I eat 3 times a day? If it works for you in that moment, yes. Should I eat 6 times a day? If it works for you in that moment, yes. Should I eat twice a day? If it works for you in that moment, yes. Should I eat this protein, that protein? If it works for you in that moment, then yes. But this is the key thing. If it's not working for you anymore, and this is where, and I've been here, you've probably been there, we stick with it. And it's a comfort thing. It's because we're afraid to change. It's like, but I always eat at this time. I always eat at 7, even though I'm not hungry. And now I'm a bit bloated, but I always eat at 7. You get into these things where it's like, listen to your body.
Yes, the body speaks, and but somehow it seems that we've lost our relationship with our body, and we don't listen to it. We listen to gurus, experts, and stuff like that. And even though the body is obviously showing that it doesn't feel good from it, we are still trying to do it.
Absolutely. And you said a word there, guru. The people who make people gurus, gurus come about because people make them gurus. It's people that put them up on a pedestal, and that's why I will go back to what I spoke about earlier with my students, where I'm like I never want anyone ever to put me on a pedestal. So I can sit here and I can come across very deep and intellectual, and because I love speaking about these type of experiences. I love sharing this information, and sometimes if this is someone's first interaction with me, or if it's the first time they hear me speak, they go, wow, this is, but that is the last thing I would want people to take away from me. And again, I've said this numerous times now, all I want is to empower people to think for themselves and be their own person. That's all I want. Always quit. Don't believe anything I've said so far. Not one word. Take it on. If it's interesting, go do your own research. And if you want to contact me like you have and have a discussion, I would absolutely do it and oblige in any way. But always, the only guru you should have is the person that's looking back at you in the mirror. That's your guru. That person should be your own doctor. That person should be your own priest, if you want to call it that, your own spiritual leader. That person should be your own nutritionist. That person should be your own personal trainer. That person right there, because that's the only person that will ever fully love you, and that's yourself. Okay, and that's why you got to start with yourself first of all. And I say all this. I say all this as a person who is on the journey like everyone else. Is there days where I'm not loving myself as much as I possibly can? Absolutely. Absolutely. There's days where I'm like, God, Robbie, you're an idiot. Why did you do that? But yet there's that voice going, it's okay. It's all right. Like, I love you. I love you, brother. I love you. You did your best. I love you. So that voice is always in the back there now. because of I've been lucky enough to be exposed to people who've been able to bring this thought process in me, like Joseph Shilton Pierce, like Paul Chek, and having discussions with people like yourself. This helps me even to build this sort of thought process even more. So
Yes, and it's like just sharing your experience, and people can take what they find valuable and just apply it in their life. And well, on the topic of nutrition, I really want to ask you something. I come from a past with eating disorders. I've been through it all, like from emotional eating to binge eating to anorexia and
uh,
bulimia. I found peace of my mind and health once I realized that the reason for eating disorders is actually hidden on a biochemical level. I mean that what you eat, how much you sleep and train, and etc., directly change the biochemistry of your body, and thus it has a direct influence on your mind. I think that people try to treat eating disorders the wrong way. What do you think about this? Like eating disorders, nutrition, biochemistry?
yeah, yeah. This is a very very interesting topic, and I often talk about this too. So a lot of mental health issues, a lot of mental health issues. Now I would never sit here and say all mental health issues. I would say a lot of them have biochemical issues or could potentially have biochemical issues as their root cause. So things that could have a profound influence on our biochemistry would be things like nutrition. So you could have like your nutrition could really be uh, the root cause of your mental health issues, along with your poor circadian rhythms, along with maybe some toxicity issues within the body. So they could potentially be the root cause of someone's mental health. Now, I would not state that every single mental health issue is purely down to nutrition or sleep as its root cause, but I definitely would say that they are at least a contributing factor, without question. Without question. Now, other root causes to mental health could definitely be more psychological, and it's just that the poor nutrition and the poor sleep patterns and the environmental toxicity, they just add more fuel to the fire. So that's when they can be contributing factors. But there definitely is cases of where they are the root causes, without question. I mean, so for instance, I always and if people don't want to like if people just easy analogies. First of all, is I'm sure you know this, I know this. What do we like when we get like really hungry and our blood sugar drops? We're assholes. We feel terrible. So there's your mood being disturbed by biochemical or nutritional needs. What do you like when you have a hangover? You just drank a load of stuff. It's all biochemistry, all food. It's all biochemistry. It's all impacting how you feel. You feel terrible the next day. Another one is blood sugar regulation. Oh, that is a huge one. Blood sugar regulation. So you have like you can go into hyperglycemia where the blood sugar is high and you're really hyperactive. Woo! And all of a sudden insulin crashes that sugar down and now you're hypoglycemic and all of a sudden you're like shaking and really anxious and you start snapping at people and telling them to like fuck off. Sorry now if I couldn't square. Uh, but so and then you could go to someone and say, "Oh, you have bipolar," and it's just like, "Oh, it could be that their blood sugar is really poorly regulated." So there's people out there who have done a lot more research in this area. Nora Gagatis is one. She's a great book called Primal Body, Primal Mind, and she used a lot of nutritional interventions with people with mental health issues. Another fantastic woman is Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride. She has done work with the GAPS diet, gut and psychology syndrome, where she heals the gut, and a lot of psychological issues seem to, uh, vastly improve, if not go away with people. Another fantastic woman, absolute hero, is Joan Matthews Larson. She wrote a book called Depression Free Naturally, and that's a huge book on and nutritional intervention for mental health. And she deals with people like with drug addictions and alcohol addictions, and she uses like a lot of nutritional interventions on that. Another resource would be Carl Pfeiffer, who had the book Nutrition and Mental Illness. So that book is about nutrition and mental illness. So that's more stuff. And even just do Google Scholar research, nutrition and mental illness. You're going to get tons of peer-reviewed articles up on it. So can nutrition, can sleep, circadian rhythms, can environmental toxins, can they be root causes of mental health issues? Absolutely. Are they the root cause of every mental health issue? I could never sit here and say yes, and I don't think they are. Are they a contributing factor to every mental health issue? I would absolutely say they are a contributing factor. But other mental health issues can have different root causes. Your upbringing could definitely be a root cause. You could have been victim of sexual abuse. That could definitely be a root cause. So uh, the that so like nutrition isn't the root cause of that. But can bad nutrition exacerbate or make that worse? Yes, it can. But it's huge. It's absolutely massive. Again, anything that can impact the biochemistry of your body, which is like anything almost, and nutrition is one of the biggest factors, and circadian biology can absolutely impact that. Let me just say, I don't know if this is, do you do video or just audio podcast, but if people can't see you, you do video, so people do see you, so they can clearly see that you're a stunningly beautiful woman. So all I'd say is, for someone who's gone through the trials and tribulations, I congratulate you on being where you are right now in this moment. That it's amazing, and I have nothing but love and respect for that. I've never gone through anything like that personally, and but definitely, Paul Check would say what you went through was a gift. It mightn't have felt like time, but like, to look at how healthy and radiant you are, and now you're in a position now to help others because you've been through similar stuff. So I would just congratulate you on that. It's amazing.
It's definitely, like you said, it a gift. It's really hard while you're experiencing it, but then you learn so much, and knowing that you can share what you've gone through and how you recovered and help other people that are in this situation is really what motivates you and like gives you power to do what you do.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah, without question. It's funny. Tony Robbins had a very famous line one time. It's in his TED talk, and he goes, "Hands up who likes surprises," and everyone puts their hands up, and he says, "You're all liars," because he's like, when you get a surprise that you don't like, you call it a problem. Yeah, so I always love that. And whereas, yeah, and Paul Check, he flips it around. He's like, your problems are teachers. They're here to teach you things. They're gurus. And again, I say that as someone who's just as human as anyone says this. Like, when like your iPhone breaks, and you're like, oh shit. But what you need to realize is, this is a moment. This is a moment to see what are you truly made of. Okay, my iPhone broke, but I'm alive. I can see. I've got eyes. It's a fucking miracle. Like, these things are. I can breathe. I have my extremities. I haven't been told I have a life. My life is going to end in a week through some terminal disease. It's a phone. And then you start to realize that that was a teaching opportunity. The breaking of my phone and my iPad, they were just an opportunity to teach me what really was important. It was actually a positive thing. It made me step back and say, what's really important here in life? Even little things like Ryan Holiday speaks about that in his book. He's like, it's even just like these little shitty things in life. Like, again, the phone breaking, not even mad things. These are little opportunities to, like, really be in control of how you respond to everything. Like, okay, Tony Robbins even says he has like the 90-second rule. I think he says he gives himself like a minute and a half to like lose a bit of steam, and then he's like, I'm back, I'm back. So it's okay to have those few seconds, and I'm the same as anyone. Like, if this laptop broke now, I'm like, oh shit. But then after a while, you're like, all right, let's have a bit of perspective here, and then realize that was actually another teacher to teach me that it was good. And then when you get through those little trials and tribulations, again, nothing compared to what you've been through. Like, and it's in your situation, what you've been through is like, if someone broke their phone, you'd be like, ha, try get over anorexia. Fuck your phone. Like, it's like Dan John. I don't know if you know who Dan John is. That Dan John did this thing called the velocity diet. It's where you like only have one meal a week, and you just have shakes for the rest of it. And he did it for 1 month, and he's like, it's the worst thing I've ever went through. But he's like, it like raised my barometer of like terrible experiences. So whenever anyone like gave out about anything, he's like, "Have you ever done the velocity diet?" He's like, "Yeah, your life is brilliant. You've no idea. You've no idea." So so again, these little trials and tribulations, yeah, and no matter how minute they are, from a phone breaking to a big whatever it is, something big, thing going on in your life. Really, they're just teachers and gurus in disguise. That's all they are, and they're opportunities for us to grow as people. And again, I say that as someone who can deal with those situations just as bad as someone else. But I like to think I'm able to step outside eventually and say, right, this is an opportunity to grow as a person.
That's a really a great advice, and uh, you really have a good point about this. So we are all people, and we always act in a different way in different situations, and it's just about observing yourself and trying to be your best, as you said earlier.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
And one of the topics I'm fascinated by is metabolic typing and the proper nutrition. You seem to know a lot about it, and Dr. Kayley, the creator of the diet, I think. Would you tell us more about his story and how he came to the metabolic typing diet?
Yeah, and again, I'd say first of all, I just share that story. I've had a lot of people criticize me for sharing that because they're like, he was a quack. There's no science. I can't believe you peddle that. For such an intelligent guy, they're talking about me here. Like they think I'm intelligent. They're like, I can't believe you put that forward. So again, all I'm doing is sharing that story. I'm not saying it's gospel. I'm not saying it's truth. All I'm doing is I got the information originally from Dr. Nicholas Gonzalez, and I just share it and I say, if this really happened, if this is true, this is very interesting. And then it's up to you to go and get the book and read more about it. But I will absolutely share the story, no problem at all. So the story, from what I've gathered from the little bit of reading I've done on it, and from listening to Dr. Gonzalez, who unfortunately passed away last year, Dr. Nicholas Gonzalez, which was I was hoping to meet him someday, but that won't happen anyway. But the story is that Dr. Kelly was a dentist. This is like 1950s, 1960s America. And he was diagnosed with a pancreatic cancer. Now, for anyone that does not too familiar with cancer, pancreatic cancer is very lethal. And he was actually as far as I can remember, was stage 4, and there is no stage 5 in cancer. So now already I say this, and if a conventional oncologist would listen, they'd be like, this is bullshit. But again, I'm just sharing the story. So he had a I think he only a few months to live. So he just went home and got his stuff in order. But he called his mother, and his mother kind of flew out and stayed with him and said, "Listen, if you're gonna die, let's go out trying." So he had a terrible diet, by the way, at this point. So she cleaned up his diet, and he kind of ate a very almost vegan diet, but he still had like a bit of goat's yogurt and raw goat's milk because he had goats in his garden. And he outlived his prognosis. He was given about 6 months, I think, to live, and a year later he was still living. But the tumors were still there on scans, and he could still feel that he wasn't right. And now the cancer had done so much damage to his pancreas that he couldn't really make the enzymes to digest his food anymore. But at that time, digestive enzymes were coming out in the market. So he had a friend who was a pharmacist who used to supply him with some enzymes, and that started to help. So again, he was still living, he was still going okay. But what he started to notice was when he took the enzymes, the digestive enzymes, and particularly pancreatic enzymes, he started taking pancreatic enzymes. What he started to notice was that he could digest his food better, but he would feel really sick, really sick. And if he stopped taking the enzymes, he'd feel better, but then his digestion of the food would go all wonky again. So then he'd take the enzymes again and feel terrible, but digest. So this kind of went on for a while. And he's like, "What's going on here?" So he went back and he was like, "Is there something with enzymes and cancer tumors?" So apparently he went back into a library and he found this work by a guy called Dr. John Beerard, who was an embryologist. He was originally he was either Scottish and he taught at Manchester, or he was from Manchester and he taught in Scotland, one or the other. I'm really sure he taught in Edinburgh. But John Beerard was a scientist in the late 19th century, early 20th century. And Beerard was fascinated with this idea that cancer tumors were tropoblasts. And a tropoblast is basically a group of undifferentiated cells. They haven't specialized into anything. Like, they haven't turned into anything. They're just like undifferentiated. And he noticed that these trophoblasts were exactly like the development of a female placenta when she's pregnant. So Beerard was like, why does the placenta not kill a woman if it has the exact same properties and growth factors of cancer? Because cancer, he noticed, was a trophoblast that matured into cancer. And he's like, why does this happen? So what he came to realize was that when a baby starts to secrete its own pancreatic enzymes, it starts to mature those trophoplasts into placenta and control its growth. So he hypothesized that enzymes seem to have some controlling mechanism on tumor growth or trophoplast growth. So he was like, could they potentially have some treatment for cancer? He did a few trials and it worked on a few clients. This is John Beerard now, back in the early 20th century. But at that same time, Madame Curie had come out with radiation therapy, and her work sort of kind of became more, it just outshone Beerard, and he kind of got forgotten, and he passed away and his work got forgotten. But then Dr. Kelly went back into the library and dug it up, and he's like, enzymes and cancer tumors. Like, so what Kelly realized was when he started taking his digestive enzymes, he hypothesized that it was killing off the tumor, but the toxicity of the tumor death made him feel grotesquely ill. So what he was like is, I'm not getting sicker, I just need to detox. So he's like, how can I detox? So he believed that one of the best ways was a coffee enema that used to be in the traditional Merck manual, which was like the conventional medical book back in the day. Because people think coffee enemas are wacky alternative therapies. They were actually in conventional medical textbooks up until like the 1970s, from what I've been told. So at this stage, Dr. Kelly is eating basically a vegetarian diet. He's taking enzymes and he's doing coffee enemas. And the man lived till 2005, and he pretty much done that. Now, so he was alive now long after his prognosis, and people started to hear about this. So they started to go to him for treatments. Like, people were like, hey, I heard you cured your cancer. And he would always say, I never cured it. I learned to live with cancer. Because he's like, if I went off my diet, like, it would start to, I'd relapse. So he never used the word cure. He'd say, I learned to live, I learned to control my cancer expression. So people basically started going to him, and he started to treat them. But he started to treat them with the very same diet that cured him. So it worked for some people, but it didn't work for everyone. And this really annoyed Dr. Kelly. So from what Dr. Gonzalez spoke about, he said Kelly was someone that just always was thinking and always, questioning why not working. So he was like, Gonzalez said he was a genius. He was an absolute genius. A very odd man, but a genius. So the story then goes that one day a woman came with really, really bad food allergies and sensitivities. Like, her life was basically hell on earth. She could only eat a handful of foods. And he basically put her on the same diet that he put everyone on, a vegetarian diet, enzymes, some supplements that he started to use, and coffee enemas. And initially she got a bit better, but then after a few months she really started to regress. And actually, apparently after about 6 months to a year, they'd actually got married. They fell in love and got married. But after about a year on this protocol, she started to deteriorate rapidly. And this was really boggling Dr. Kelly's mind. He's like, what is going on? So he tried everything and anything to try and turn this around. Because at this stage too, this was a few years into him treating people like on the underground, if you like. And conventional medicine, we're really trying to do in Dr. Kelly. They're like, he's a quack. So, if this got out that his now wife ended up in hospital because he couldn't even cure her, it was just going to be a disaster. So, and again, this is just, I'm passing this story on from Dr. Gonzalez. You can look into it yourself. But it sounds great, though, doesn't it?
But by the way, I really like that story, and even if it's not true, as you said at the beginning, I think that it gives a great perspective how he analyzes everything, and it's not
Absolutely.
one thing that fits all people, and it just for the moral of the story, it's a great story.
Absolutely. So what we need to realize at this stage with his now wife is that he was still in this box of vegan diet, enzymes, these exact supplements and enemas. That was it. He's like, everyone had to fit into this box. So he did everything. He gave her more raw food, less raw food, more cooked food, less cooked food, more enzymes, less enzymes, more enemas, less enemas, and more of that supplement, less of this. Nothing worked. And at this stage, apparently, she was like so ill. She was just basically in bed most of the time. She had very little energy and whatnot. And then Dr. Kelly, so this is where Dr. Gonzalez tells this part of the story, and he says, this is what separates the genius from the rest of us. Kelly was able to sit back and say, I'm wrong. This protocol is wrong. Most people say it's her. She's lying to me. She's not doing the enzyme. She's not doing blah, blah, whatever. He's like, I'm wrong. My protocol is not right for that individual. Now, at this stage, he was very anti-meat. He thought meat was not a good thing. He thought it placed too much burden on the pancreatic enzymes for cancer, which is what a lot of the Gerson people would peddle. They'd say like it exhausts your enzymes and whatnot. Too much meat or protein. So he just said, listen, the only real thing I have not given her is red meat. She probably had a bit of fish or poultry maybe. But he's like, I haven't given her any quality animal flesh. So apparently he rang the house because at this stage she was so ill she couldn't live with Dr. Kelly because he was too busy running the clinic. She was living at home with her mother. So he rings the house. The mother answered and he said, listen, our last option is this. I want you to source some quality raw meat and feed it to her. And like the mother's like, what? Meat? Like, you're so anti-meat. Like you're Dr. Kelly, like the vegetarian, and he's like, listen, it's the only option we have left. He said, feed it to her raw, because it'll be less on her pancreas. But make sure it's good quality meat, as good quality as you get. Local farmer if you can. So she goes off, this mother sources some quality meat, gives it to her daughter, and she starts to feel better. So she rings back and says, yes, she seems to be a little bit better. And he goes, right, just keep doing that. We're getting something. Feeds her again, she feels better. Feeds her again, and she starts to really perk up and feel a lot better. So much better that within a few days now she's kind of not as bedridden. She's walking around more. And then lo and behold, meat becomes a mainstay in her diet, and it just completely changed her around and completely changed everything. She gets back to full health. Now, at first when the meat started to work, that bamboozled Kelly. He was like, what is going on? I don't know what's going on, but keep doing it. So again, he had to know why. So again, he went back to the library and he came across a book called Symptoms of Visceral Disease by a doctor called Francis Pottinger Sr. And Francis Pottinger Sr. was one of the first doctors or first individuals to write seminal work on what is now known as the autonomic nervous system. Back then it was called the vegetative nervous system. So your autonomic nervous system regulates all of the subconscious processes of your body: digestion, heartbeat, respiration. Now you can consciously override, you can consciously think about breathing, but we obviously know most times we don't even think about breathing, it just happens. But things again like digestion, the making of hormones, of enzymes, regulating your pH in your body, regulating neurotransmitters, all under the influence of, the brain really, but then the autonomic nervous system. So your autonomic nervous system is the master regulator of metabolism, and it has two branches. It has your sympathetic branch and your parasympathetic branch. And what Francis Pottinger realized was that certain humans are more sympathetically wired. Other humans are more parasympathetically wired. And because of their physiological wiring and their bias to be one way with their sympathetic nervous system, certain nutrients interact differently with those individuals depending on if they're more sympathetic dominant or if they're more parasympathetic dominant. And Dr. Kelly started to the puzzle started to come together. He's like, and then he started to read into all this information on sympathetic individuals have fast heart rates, diluted pupils. They usually have not great digestion because they're more in a fight or flight state, so the blood flows more away from the viscera. They usually don't have great bowel movements. So they're usually more prone to eating fruits and salads and gentler type foods. They don't really like meat. It sits in their stomach. They're usually type A personalities, go, go, go. They don't need a lot of sleep. They like caffeine. Whereas the parasympathetics are your more type B people. They're slower. If it can be done tomorrow, it'll be done tomorrow. They love food. the type B's, parasympathetics, they live to eat, whereas the sympathetics, they just eat to live. They're like, it's just fuel. What's your obsession with food? I don't get it. Whereas the parasympathetic are more laid back, slow heart rate, more blood flow to the digestive areas. They just digest food better. They have more regular bowel movements. They've got stronger acid production in their stomach. So he started to put these things together. And what he started to realize was that everybody is biochemically unique. And another factor in this was then the work of Weston A. Price, which he also was aware of. Weston A. Price was a dentist that traveled the world in the 1930s. He was originally very interested in how primitive people looked after their dental health, or the dental formation and structure of people who lived on primitive environments, if you want to call it that. So Weston Price traveled the world and he studied and lived with people like the Eskimos up in the Arctic, the North American Indians, the Scottish in the Outer Hebrides, the people of the Swiss Alps, the Malaysian populations down in the Pacific Oceans and those islands in the Pacific Islands. He went to Australia with the Aborigines, the coastal and inland Aborigines. He went then to South America and studied the Peruvian skulls to see their dental arches. And what Dr. Price noticed was two main things. Well, three, I suppose. One, all of these primitive tribes, vastly different diets, like really different. An Eskimo diet is like 80% saturated. Traditional Eskimo, not a modern one. 80% or so saturated fat, all from like whale blubber and fish oil, and about 19.5% protein from the fish, and about like 0.5% carbohydrate when they got a bit of berries in their summer, because carbs don't really grow in winter conditions. Then conversely, when he went to like the Pacific Islands, they were almost vegetarian. Like they ate tropical fruits because it was more like a tropical environment. Tropical fruits, tubers, vegetables. They ate a bit of fish and they had a bit of like wild boar. The Maasai tribe in Africa, he was also in Africa by the way, they had about a 70% saturated fat diet, but they got their saturated fat from raw milk and the bit of meat they ate. But they also had more tubers and fruits in their diet. So vastly different diets, but they were all abundantly healthy people, really healthy, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. So the thing he noticed, the first thing Weston Price noticed, vastly different diets. Second thing, the one thing that linked all of these diets together, or nutritional lifestyles, all their food came from Mother Nature. But then the third thing he realized was this: when these primitive people came in contact with Western man or people from the West in the world, and they started to eat processed foods that the Western man would bring, white flour, pasteurized milk, sugar, canned goods, he started to realize that their health started to deteriorate. They started to get cavities in their teeth that they never had before. The offspring to the generation that started to eat these foods were completely inferior to any of the populations that came before. So within one generation, the offspring that was produced to these people who started to take these foods from Western man were inferior mentally, physically, and emotionally. They started to be born with crooked teeth, with narrow nasal passages. Their dental arches started to narrow, so they got crowding on their teeth instead of having broad arches that these more healthier people who stayed on their traditional diets had. They started to get things like depression. Like in some of these primitive societies, when Weston Price tried to explain to them about mental illness and depression, they had no words for depression. They couldn't understand what it was. But then when they started to have these processed foods, they started to experience melancholy and depression. And so that's what he noticed, is that when they went away from their traditional diets and started to incorporate these processed foods, that their health now started to deteriorate. So back to metabolic typing, Dr. Kelly, with the work of John Berard, with the work of Francis Pottinger, and with the work of Weston Price, he formulated what became then known as the metabolic typing diet. He realized that there is no one diet that every single human will thrive on, that we are all biochemically unique, and therefore all our nutritional requirements are unique. And that's the fundamental underlying principle of metabolic typing. What I will say is that's undeniable. That is undeniable that we are biochemically unique. Every single one of us are biochemically unique. And because we are biochemically unique, that means that our nutritional requirements are unique to us. Now, can you make some broad generalizations depending on where you are in the world and where your genetic lineage came from? You could. And are there certain nutritional principles that we all have to hit? Like, do we all have to hit a certain caloric intake to thrive? Yes. Do we all have to hit a certain macronutrient amount to at least have, you know, reasonable health? Yes, we do need to get a certain amount of proteins and fats and carbs in. But what really separates us is the ratios and the types that we will thrive on. And as we spoke about earlier on, the types and ratios that we thrive on now ourselves may not be the types and ratios that we ourselves will thrive on in the future. Because again, we're dynamic. So not only are we biochemically and nutritionally unique from one individual to another, we're also biochemically and nutritionally unique from moment to moment within ourselves. That is undeniable. Now, whether you want to believe in metabolic typing and parasympathetic versus sympathetic, or with Bill Walcott's fast oxidative and slow oxidative and the questionnaire you take, if you want to say, listen, that's all horseshit, looking at physical traits and diet-led traits and psychological traits, that's all like that. That's all up for discussion because there is no real way to really know what truly is your metabolic type. And this is the thing too, it's not like, again, it's not like you're this metabolic type and that's it, because that's the whole antithesis of metabolic typing. You're dynamic, you can shift. What you would say is if you are more towards one end of the extremes, it's very hard to go from like a carnivore type and then be a pure vegetarian. That generally won't happen, but you definitely can shift more towards the middle of that continuum, absolutely. But so metabolic typing as a sort of concept is undeniable. That is undeniable. Like we all know we thrive on different foods. Like that's you know what I mean. That's that we can't deny that. But to say that there's this way of detecting exactly how you should eat, that's all definitely not true and up for discussion. But that is a sorry that is a story of Dr. Kelly. Take it for what you want. It's very interesting. I've only read up on it. I've read both sides of the argument that he was a quack, he was a maniac. I've read that he was an absolute genius, way ahead of his time. It's really up to yourself to make your own conclusions. Um, Personally, where I stand on it, I would like to think that he was definitely on the more genius end of things, because I really had a profound sort of, I guess I really like Dr. Gonzalez. I really like the man, and I'd like to think that he was genuine in what he was putting forward with Dr. Kelly. And I've read the book, his 50 Cases, and it seems to be a pretty compelling argument that it was legit. But take it for what you want. Again, don't believe what I've just said. It's just a story, but it was a very good story.
Yes, thank you for sharing it because I also think it's a really interesting story and it just makes you think more and research. And you know that in the research you find a lot of things, even if the story is not completely true, you
Yeah,
find your own truth based on what you've heard in that story.
yeah. And this is what I would say as well is that, and this is part of the journey too that we go on. Like, you know, you probably gone through similar things. Like where when I was younger, like in my early 20s, we go through that like anger stage where we're like, you know, the world is doomed. Pharmaceutical companies, you know, conventional medicine, they're evil. Like, you know, and you're like, you know, everything's, and then like you kind of mellow out a little bit, and again go back to that unconditional love sort of situation, and you know that listen that everyone and everything is the way they are for a reason. That still doesn't mean now you don't do anything. You know, it's still, you know, if you still feel you can contribute and enhance people's lives and your own, definitely put that forward. You know, you should put that stuff out there. But what I would say is that I definitely would be more in a centered position. Do I believe conventional medicine is completely evil? No. Do I believe there's certain things they can do way better? Yes, of course. But think about it like this. If you just took the concept of, again, thinking for yourself and being your own person, you have to understand that if I'm a conventional medical student and I go to college, this is what I'm brainwashed with. So that's why it's important to think for yourself, because the really good conventional doctors, they take the best of both worlds. They don't go conventional medicine's the only way. They don't go alternative therapies, a lot of bullshit. They're like, I'm going to take the best from conventional. I'll take the best from what's termed alternative medicine, and I'm going to bring it together, and I'm going to look through it in an evidence-based model, and I'm going to formulate what I think is the best methods and the best practice based off what is evidence-based from both ends right now. So that, like, again, like I said earlier, you don't want to be at any end of that extreme. You know, like, oh, conventional medicine's terrible, alternative's terrible. There definitely needs to be more of a balance. Conventional medicine definitely has massive downfalls when it comes to chronic diseases, but that's not what they're educated. They're educated how to deal when a disease is full blown, and then they're brainwashed by pharmaceutical companies because doctors then just don't have enough time to look at the research. I'm actually reading a book right now called Bad Science by Ben Goldacre, and he's just like, most doctors just don't have time to read the papers, and they actually don't even know how to read a paper to know that it's bad. That's really bad data in that. Like, the statistics in that were definitely very sham to make that drug look better than it is. So they just end up believing what they're told by the pharmaceutical rep. But then conversely, with alternative therapies, okay, while so like, and I've definitely come more from the holistic world, so that's where I kind of came into this. But we do need to stand back and say a lot of those therapies definitely have very little evidence behind them. A lot of them are questionable, and that we're less harsh, if you like to say, on ourselves in that world. We do need to be a little bit more evidence based. But I definitely think it's the two worlds need to come together in that. So with conventional medicine, they could definitely start integrating more like nutrition and sleep and circadian rhythms and holistic lifestyle and living. But also then the holistic end could also take a little bit more of an evidence-based approach as well. And, more of a synergy, taking the best from both worlds would definitely be a better way of going about it. So I've definitely mellowed in terms of, like, saying, oh, the world is doomed and, all that, and being more accepting and more loving, and realizing that, okay, if there's a conventional doctor out there and he's like, alternative therapy is bullshit and it's horse shit and it's no evidence behind it and it's all woo woo and it's all crap, that I unconditionally love that person. That's just where they are currently. That's their perception of the world. To them, everything has to be evidence based, and if it's not, or if there's not good science behind it, or if it's just out of conventional medicine, that's just currently where they're at. Who's to say that in a few years' time that mightn't change? But I just need to accept that, and I love that person for who they are. That's all I have for them, okay? Whereas before, I'd be like, fuck you! You're kidding!
We all go through that, and then we realize that the world is not just black and white, and it's kind of gray. So
there's a lot of gray,
yes, a lot of gray. And you shared a lot about the nutrition topic, and because I took a lot of your time, but I want to ask you two questions about movement and athletics, because I know you're really involved in that. You work with a lot of athletes, and athletes are great cheaters when it comes to movement, meaning that they seem to overcompensate well for some parts of their bodies that don't function very well. What would be your advice to athletes? What could they do to maintain their body's health instead of just ignoring some weaknesses and playing their strengths?
Yeah, I mean, that's usually the best athletes are the best compensators. So I would very, very much, again, like we spoke about numerous times, very much about empowering people to look after themselves. So I definitely would be a big fan of the message that Kelly Surratt puts out, in that he believes it's every human's right to do their own maintenance on their body from a movement perspective. 100% agree with him. Going back to, you be your own guru, you be your own doctor, you be your own spiritual leader, you be your own physical therapist, you be your own personal trainer. Empower yourself to look after that stuff. So very same with movement. When I deal with athletes or clients, I use the functional movement screen as just a generic sort of overall where they at just in terms of basic fundamental movements. So that's what I use. And again, that's just to see four main things. Are they in pain? Do they have a gross asymmetry? Do they have dysfunctional movement? And do they have a baseline minimum of movement competency or quality? So I would always look at that first. My recommendations to anyone out there would be probably to go get screened or go get assessed by someone who's well respected in that regard. And work in conjunction with them and working on those weaknesses and where you are. If there are weaknesses that are holding back your performance or could potentially lead to an injury. So I would go get someone screened. I'd recommend someone who's FMS qualified or someone who's very well in the FMS because that's just my background. And I'll say it right here. People should know me by this stage into this podcast. Do I believe the the FMS is the holy grail, the gospel? It's the only way? Of course not. You can use whatever system you want to get an appreciation for movement quality as long as you are getting an appreciation for movement quality. So what I'd say is investigate, probably get someone to screen you or assess you, and then work on those weaknesses, whatever they are. And as long as they're definitely weaknesses that are curtailing you from performance or a potential injury standpoint. I'd work on that and look into the work then of the likes of Ido Portal, doing great work there on instead of just thinking about exercise, start thinking more like it's movement. Just move your body. Movement is nutrition to the joints.
Yes,
Very
and restorative movement. I don't know if you're familiar with it with Katie Bauman.
Yeah, Katie. Yeah. Move your DNA. Fantastic. Katie Bauman. Fantastic. That's stuff I haven't looked into, but I've listened to her for a few of her interviews. Again, we go back to epigenetics. Movement. Moving the body turns genes on and off. Exercise. You can control that stuff. So it's just another profound way to look at things. Yeah, Katie Bauman's great.
Yes, I'm getting certified in restorative health, and it really changed my perspective on movement and everything. And it was kind of a fight with my ego because I was an athlete, and like I was going through all these things, ignoring my body and stuff like that. And once I stumbled over restorative movement, it was like I didn't know anything, and I had to switch everything and start moving in a completely different way. And it was kind of a shock for my mind and my ego.
Ines, thank you so much for this interview. Thank you so much. This means a lot to me. I'm very extremely flattered that you'd want me to come on, and it's been fantastic. And I know I've done 99% of the talking, so but thank you so much. It's been absolutely brilliant. In terms of contacting me, what's going on? So currently, I work in Dublin in a personal training college called the Elite Fitness and Performance Academy. So Monday to Friday, I get to teach and mentor personal training students. I absolutely love what I do. I love it, and I have to say I need to thank Jason Kane and Sean McGarty, who are the owners of that business, because they have given me the platform to fulfill something I love doing, which is teaching. And like I'm even getting a little bit teary eyed here because I truly do love what I do, and I love the guys for allowing me to do that. So, and if there's anyone ever in Ireland, so if you ever want to come to Dublin and visit, absolutely, we'd love to have you come. So if anyone's in the Dublin area, contact me and stop by. Love it. I'm actually started a master's in strength and conditioning in St Mary's Twickenham, so that's something I'm doing right now. Then in terms of just getting in touch with me, just like you done, Facebook, even though we'll tell a little funny story here. I was in my Facebook account and I saw you have 7 unread messages. And like, no, I don't. And I was like, these were messages that I hadn't like clicked on to accept. And I was like, oh, I never knew these were here. And your message was from like last February. I'm like, oh my God. I was like, she must think I'm such an asshole. But So I was like, oh my God, I better reply because I'd love to do a podcast. So eventually we got there. So thankfully I found it. So Facebook is just my name, Robbie Bourke. Bourke is spelled Bourke. Friend me and if you friend me and we don't have any friends, just send me a message saying I heard you in the podcast. I'd love to be a friend. Absolutely no problem. So Facebook's probably the best way to get me through Messenger or Twitter. My Twitter is just at Robbie Bourke, so you can get me on that. And on Skype, I'm Robbie.Bourke1. So if you want to Skype me, we can do that. So I'm happy to do, even if it's not a podcast, if it's just a chat, no problem. I'm always up for that once I have the time. So you can see how much I love talking about life and human optimization. So thanks so much for having me. This has been so good.
Thank you as well, and I can really see that you love what you're doing, so that's great. So keep spreading your mission and making people's life better because you really make a difference